Hi, guys, and welcome back to AuDHD and Then Some. It's always me, Ellie, and today I'm genuinely so pleased to be joined by the absolute lovely Elizabeth Ormes. Elizabeth is a psychotherapist, trauma specialist, an entrepreneur, and the founder of Actualizing Your Best Self. She has spent nearly 30 years working within mental health and the experience spanning everything from the Department of Veteran Affairs and foster care to domestic violence services and non-profit organizations. Her work today particularly focuses on trauma, identity, life transitions, relationships, nervous system regulation, and helping people actually understand themselves rather than simply trying to make themselves fit into a life that isn't working for them. And sometimes that makes this conversation particularly special for me, is that Elizabeth is also neurodivergent herself. So she brings together something I really value on this podcast, which is professional knowledge alongside genuine lived experience. Her approach looks at the whole person, including their trauma, their nervous system, their body, and our relationships and our identity, and all those experiences that have shaped the way that's made us who we are. And I have a feeling that she's going to have a lot to bring. So, Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me on your show, Ellie.
Did I get all of that right? Was it all okay?
You said that so beautifully. I wish I could just bottle what you said and just regurgitate it every time somebody asks, so what do you do? Who do you like to work with?
You've achieved a lot, man. That's a lot. You've got a lot going on.
I'm almost 52 years old, so I think I've had a bit of time on this planet to try and do a few things.
That's amazing. So as always, what I always start with is I'm going to ask you, who is Elizabeth Ormes and what's your story? I'm just going to go with that and then we're just going to let it flow from there.
Well, so in the States, when people ask you, so tell me about yourself, everybody always wants to hear about your work, right? Like, they're not asking, like, who are you as a person? They're asking, so what do you do? Like, how can that relate to me? Can I use you in some way for my own benefit? And, so I've been giving that a lot of thought lately. And I'm like, well, do I lead with, I'm a trauma therapist. I'm a psychoeducational person. Do I lead with the work? Do I lead with my career? Or do I lead with I consider myself a woman, a mother, a spouse, a daughter. I'm one of those people that we call in the States in the sandwich generation, where I have emerging adult children and aging parents, and I'm trying to navigate caring for both. Do I talk about my own, identities? Where do I start? So yeah, I mean, I think I'm a pretty complex person. I think I've got a lot of different facets to me, and
you wear many hats.
I do. I like wearing many hats.
Yeah, it keeps things fresh. So, are you neurodivergent, may I ask?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have said that I was when I was younger. My brother was somebody who struggled with his own health and mental well-being, and struggled in school, got the diagnosis of ADHD, and I was the smart, quiet older sister, so nobody really considered me to be neurodiverse when I was younger.
Yeah, we have that in our family. So out of my 3 children, one of them presents more neurodiverse. So the other one that didn't present as neurodiverse completely fell by the wayside. We didn't even realize there was anything going on, So I completely understand that.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of like where, like, a lot of the women that I work with, they fall into that category, right? They were quiet, they were smart, they didn't want to add more stress to the family environment. And so neurodivergence identities and diagnoses were never really considered for them. So they just they masked and they moved on as much as they could.
So when did you officially, or when did you start realizing actually you're neurodivergent?
I would say it was, towards the latter, my latter 40s into 50. I like the mask, the things that I did wasn't working for me anymore. And so it was one of those things where it's like, um, and both my children were diagnosed in elementary school with ADHD, and my youngest, who considers themselves like kind of gender fluid, um,
Yep.
uh, thinks that they may be on the spectrum, and so like I was like, okay, they have this. My brother had this. My dad thinks that he has this. Like, where do I fall within it? I probably have something, and shined that light onto myself. And yeah, at 50, I finally went and said, okay, I maybe need some professional um, eyes on this.
Did
I
it feel
got diagnosed.
validating? Did it answer some of your questions, do you think, about yourself? Because I find like with neurodivergent people, we're always a little bit not lost, but we always have some unanswered questions about ourselves. And I don't speak about all neurodivergent people, but just, a lot of the ones that I've met, we have this longing and this sense that we don't belong and we haven't found our tribe and etc. Do you feel like when you had your diagnosis, you were like, shit, that makes perfect sense for me? Did you feel relief, grief, but also validation?
Exactly. It's I sometimes labels can be freeing and sometimes they can be restricting. And like when
Yeah.
you get that diagnosis, right, I found it to be like my nervous system and everything just said, "Yep, that's why we struggle. This is what's going on underneath there. It's not something, and we know how to deal with that. So, okay, now we move on."
I think it's part for me. I think that validation, finding out that whether you're self-diagnosed or professionally diagnosed or whatever, it's all the same. I think once you get that validation, then I feel like then people generally start working on stuff like their nervous system and their authentic self. I feel like that validation gave me the room to then start working on myself. Um, because I was just searching for the answer for what is it? What is wrong with Ellie, or wrong with Ellie, you know what I mean? And when I found out that, I was like, yes, now I've got the validation. Now I can implement the tools, the strategies, and I can start doing that work that I've really wanted to do for the last 40 years, but I haven't been able to do. So I think it is really validating.
I completely agree. It's one of those. It just frees you up. It's like the possibilities open up once you have that validation of, yep, your instincts were telling you, what inside said, called to you and said, you you don't you don't fit within this framework of how everybody reacts and thinks and what they're doing. You fit in this other framework. And once you got into that mindset, it was like, oh, all these other possibilities are there when you embrace yourself, when you're no longer trying to say, oh, I fit over here.
Yeah.
No, I fit over there. And once I got my tribe, my people, then it was like, boop, I can
It's
do
like
it.
a missing piece to like the puzzle. Like you've been a complete puzzle all along, but then you've just like slot the missing piece in, and it's like, oh shit. But then you have to start to do the work. A lot of people say to me, I found out I'm neurodivergent, and now when is my life going to start? And I said, it's a lifelong journey. It's not just going to start next year or next week. It's something that you can actively work on. But I feel like once you got the diagnosis, or you found out you're neurodivergent, then you can board the bus to get onto the journey. I feel like before that diagnosis or that self-diagnosis, I didn't feel like I could get on that bus yet. So I think it's definitely helped.
I Yeah, that idea of like you kind of had that picture, right? Like you said, you slot the piece in, and it just feels a little more complete. You know, the
Yeah.
image is finally there, and you're like, oh, all right, that's done. I can move on to this next section, and
Yeah. I
that
think
idea.
it's like level completed. I solved that mystery, and now I can move up. That's a really good definition. I understand that completely. Do you think because your brother presented as significantly more on the spectrum, whatever that means? Do you know what I mean? Do you think that happens to a lot of people? It's happened in my family. Do you think a lot of siblings are all neurodivergent, but because one presents more neurodivergent than the other one kind of gets lost or thinks I can't voice my issues because it's not as bad as my siblings or etc. So if that's you and that's my family as well, that must be a really common thing.
Yeah, I think it's definitely more common than we realized. So, that idea of like, well, if this is ADHD, then if I don't look exactly like that, then that means that that's not me, right? As opposed to like understanding that it's a whole range of things and different parts to it, and like sometimes people are more one than the other, right? Like my sibling, my brother, he had a lot of impulsivity issues. Like
Mm.
his thing was like that idea of, well, let me ride my skateboard down this great big hill and
Yeah.
like, because that's going to be really fun, and not think about what's going to happen at the bottom of the hill, right? And I was definitely one of those kids who I was the yeah, I don't really I can't stay focused in class. Let me just kind of like read a book and like
Yeah,
pretend
so
like
you
I'm paying
didn't present
attention.
as like you're not crazy, but like outlandish or uh, a rebel or something. And I think that's what I like to challenge about ADHD, autism, and ADHD. I always say once you meet one neurodivergent person, you've literally met one neurodivergent person. It's like when you meet one English person or one American person or etc. You've met one of them people. It's everyone is so different, but I feel like there is a misconception. There's so many people on social media and TikTok, and they're presenting as being neurodivergent, and then when we see them and we don't fit the same criteria or the same points of the spectrum as them, we're like, oh, maybe we're not neurodivergent. But I think a lot of people need to come to the understanding that everyone presents different, specifically when there's ADHD and autism involved. I've got 1%, and I was saying on different days, like sometimes I present as a lot more autistic ratio wise than I do to ADHD. And, that makes us all different on the spectrum. So I think for a lot of people, it's people coming to terms with we're not all going to be the same, because when I tell people, oh, I'm neurodivergent, one, I get, you don't look neurodivergent. Two, you still live a normal life. And three, oh, my cousin's neurodivergent. They're exactly the same as you. Do you do this, that, and the other? I think it's a huge misconception that we're all exactly the same.
Right. It's like, meeting somebody and they say, "Oh, I'm from, you know, uh England."
Yeah,
And, "Oh, I've met somebody from England. Do you know so and so?"
yeah,
Right? And
exactly
it's
that.
like, "No, I don't, because we're all like it's a big place. We're different, where I grew up, when I grew up, what else there is about
Affected
me."
me, yeah, because
All,
also we get affected by other traumas and every other things. So
yeah.
you've been working in mental health for nearly 30 years, and you've worked across some incredibly different environments like veteran services, foster care, domestic violence, and trauma. What all those years have they taught you about people that perhaps textbooks couldn't teach you? What's been your main takeaway throughout them different genres of places that you've worked and people that you've worked with?
So what I've learned is that, I mean, when I went to school, the emphasis was on understanding the person first, and then trying to adapt whatever it was that they needed. But then when you get out into the real world, all of a sudden employers and systems that you're working in all want to treat people exactly the same. Oh, you you are a veteran, therefore you need this, this, and this.
Yeah.
Oh, you're a survivor of domestic violence. You need this, this, and this. Oh, you're struggling as a parent in with abuse and neglect of your child. You need this, this, and this, and it's like, no, like people are all very different, and get to know them and then find out what they need. And some people come to you with these experiences and they don't believe in themselves. They don't believe that they can change. They don't believe that they can learn to do something different. Oh, I'm too old to do that. Or, I have too much in my past. I can never change. And it's really hard when people that's what I've learned, is that it can be hard to get people to open up to that possibility that they can be something more, or they can experience something different. And it's like, no matter where you are, who you are, what has gone on in your past, right now, today, there's something that you can learn and you can do it differently, and you can take that and carry that forward to improve your life. And that was why, when I turned 50, I was like, I've been kind of hiding myself in like these systems, these big agencies, and thinking that I could not start my own business, that I
Yeah.
couldn't do this on my own. And
Me
that,
too.
that was kind of like, like I was just struggling with like, is
Because
this really all that I
self
am?
your self-worth and self-belief was very low. Do you think that's due to trauma or neurodivergence or just everything?
Was everything, it was a fear of like being seen, of fear of being, like stepping out there into the big wide world and having to like stand out and to speak up and to share. And so it was a combination of everything, kind of like, like, do I really want to have a lens both internally, like looking at myself, and then reflecting that outward.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was hard to do that. But then once I embraced, no, I can do this. I I should do this. I want to do this. Then it became like, all right, every day is an opportunity, and just try something, do something a little bit different.
What gave you that push, do you think, to go from, working for someone to making your own thing? Did you have children to example to? Because I feel like I've got three adult children and I've got a younger child. I was very young when I had the three adult children. And, when I had the younger one now, I've found myself, and, I feel like a lot of the stuff that I've embraced recently, like starting my own business and stuff, is because I want to be an example to show her that, no matter what, even if you're neurodivergent, you can do this, that, and the other. What has been your main catalyst? Have you done it for yourself? Has someone been pushing you? What's been your overriding thing that's got you in that direction?
Yeah, so I think that was, you hit on something that I probably haven't really explored myself, but that is part of it. My youngest graduated from our high school system this
Yeah.
year, and I tell both of my kids that they can do and be anything that they want, and that I want them to live their dreams. And I realized that I wasn't really honoring that I was
Yourself.
holding
Yeah.
myself back, that I kept kind of giving myself, I had these self-limiting beliefs that I just kept like reinforcing and reinforcing. And then when I was turning 50, I said, I have only so much time here. And I know that. And I want my next 50 years to embrace what I've learned
Yeah.
and carry that forward. And so I'm like, how can I tell anyone else, especially my kids, to live out their dreams, do what they want to do, that they can do and be anything if I'm not doing the same. So yeah.
I get that. I like that philosophy. Like, actually, I feel like 40 was a real turning age for me. Maybe between 35 and 40 has been a turning age of, and I would have laughed before when people said your true authentic self, or, do your inner work. But actually, these are all really big buzzwords for me. That's really helped me find myself. And I think I lost my train of thought. That's such a neurodivergent thing to do. I lost my train of thought, but 100%, I think it's where you get to at that age, and I think for our children, we have to be that example. We grew up in a very different time and generation. I think now we're much more aware of neurodivergence, and that there can be different toolkits and different strategies. I mean, when I had my older children and I saw them displaying neurodivergent traits, ashamedly now I would say, don't do that, like, because they were presenting like I presented, and I had nothing but trouble for it throughout my whole life. So every time, and this is before I even knew they were neurodivergent or I was neurodivergent, I'd say, oh, don't do that, because people will look. And and unfortunately that affected their confidence. Now I don't do that, but that's because I'm more clued up. With my younger child, I can build her confidence, and I'm much more clued up. Do you think that you use that 40 or 50 years to learn about yourself and absorb the world, and now you're going to do the rest just making the most of it? It's been like a learning journey for the last 50 years, and now you're just going to...
That's exactly it, right? It's, I've seen, and I've experienced that, that hesitation, right? Of like, I want my children to be, as you said, their authentic selves. But I also, I worry about like them being their authentic selves, because the world can not always treat them the way that we all say we should treat each other, with kindness, 100%. With respect.
There's so much worry. I would have loved to have wanted my children from the beginning, feel free to stim. I would do that now with my child, but then, I was just trying to protect them from the state of the world, and have a trans child now who is an adult. And, at first I was like, no, be really careful it's just a learning curve. I'm getting there. We will all get there. And you said you've got a gender fluid child. I find that this is really prevalent with neurodivergence. When I go to neurodivergent spaces, there's a lot of non-binary, gender fluid. It's much more of a thing. And I was an 80s child. This wasn't an option really when I was a child. I feel like I'm so glad that our neurodivergent children or siblings are now being able to embrace their authentic self. I feel like, even if we wasn't able to, it's not necessarily because our parents were bad. It's because our parents were ill-informed, or they were just trying to do the best for us.
Well, I think it's that anxiety that we get as a parent of like, I had this child and I love them and I want nothing to hurt them. And I want to kind of wrap them in bubble wrap, but then I also know that if I do that, then they're not really experiencing life and they're not living. And it is true, like, to see the changes. There is so much more. There are, like, my youngest goes to groups where like they're with other people who are neurodivergent and embracing themselves, and they're very supported, and those weren't there when I was their age.
I think when I was younger, there was like people with disabilities, like learning difficulties, and then there was at my school really naughty boys that had ADHD. They were diagnosed with ADHD, and then there wasn't in between. And I wasn't intelligent, but I wasn't not intelligent. I'd sit down and read a book. I was a stickler for social justice. Like, that was my big thing. But, I didn't stick out like there was something really wrong with me, where a lot of people with disabilities in that time, it was quite obvious. So I think that that's the big change now. People now realize that actually, just because you've got a disability, it isn't an obvious. There is so many hidden disabilities. And I think that that is what's refreshing about where we are at right now in the world.
Yeah, I think that's one of the drawbacks in it. I know especially in the States, it's like it has to be this huge problem in order for you to like stand out or to be
Yeah.
diagnosed. It's like, oh, well, you don't want to be diagnosed with that, or you don't present with that because you don't have all these problems, right?
Yeah.
Like you're functional, you can
Yeah,
get
people say
by,
to
you
me all the
can.
time, "Oh my God, you don't look autistic." And I'm like, how does autistic even look? Like, I think
Mhm.
before they thought that maybe you looked a certain way or something, but I think people that are like us just creating things and getting out there, and I think people are now realizing actually there's not a certain way to be neurodivergent, and I think that that's really healthy.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we're starting to see that more and more. And people are um you know, they ask questions a little bit more like, "Oh, I'm not sure I understand, can you
Yeah,
explain
it's
it to
not
me?"
taboo anymore. I feel like
Yeah.
years ago, like it was a taboo thing. Oh, this person's neurodivergent. Don't ask them about it. I said to someone the other day, in front of my sister, my older sister, I said to someone, a younger person, "Are you neurodivergent?" And they're quite open about their neurodivergence. But my sister, unknowingly, she went to me, "Shh. That's not something you ask someone." And I said, actually, sometimes now it's not an offensive thing. I remember when I had my children and people used to approach me and say, "I think they're neurodivergent," or the doctor would say, "I think we need to look into neurodivergence." And I was offended at first. Little did I know I'm neurodivergent myself, but I was like, oh, I thought that was a taboo thing to say. But now I feel we've come and done a shh with
Well,
it.
I notice you've got like "be kind" behind you, right? And I think
Yeah.
that that's the difference, right? Like people are asking the question with kindness in
Yeah.
mind as opposed to like just
Judgment.
judgment or this morbid curiosity of like, I want to find out something, bad about you, or
Yeah.
yeah, it's different. At least for the most part, I think more people are like approaching it with like, I want to understand how to relate to you, and
Yeah.
I don't want to offend you. So can I ask you like, are you
I love that.
neurodivergent? Yeah.
I love that. I love people asking me. I just think it's such an opportunity to spread awareness. So trauma is obviously a huge part of your work. How do we begin to separate, and I always wonder this, how do we begin to separate trauma and neurodivergent traits? So I experienced trauma at a young age. I had childhood sexual abuse. So when I was growing up, I actually thought everything, all them little weird quirks were down to my trauma. So my parents were like, "Oh, okay, that's her trauma, this must be down to her trauma." And it still didn't fit. The shoe didn't fit. And, my dad was like, had neurodivergent traits as well. So none of it really fit together. And it's only when I had my children and they got diagnosed that I was like, you know what? It's not just trauma, it's neurodivergence as well. So how do you feel like that fits together? And how do we tell them apart?
Well, how do you tell them apart is I don't know.
Yeah.
Honestly, because I don't think you can. Like, I think they're layered, so
So interlinked.
interlinked that once you have like somebody could have trauma and have like look with some neurodivergent traits, and somebody could just have like genetic component of neurodivergence, and then they're they can be standalone, but so many people have, if you have both, then they're so interlinked, right? So it's recognizing that they travel along the same biological pathways in the brain. It's a lot of it is that executive functioning, and then your kind of like your instincts and
And
your nervous system.
hypervigilance and things like that.
Yeah, so it's how do you treat them differently is to recognize somebody who has trauma. You treat the trauma, you calm the nervous system down, you work with them on understanding and um, conceptualizing what they experienced, and separate out what happened to you
Yeah.
from these are traits that you need to learn to manage and to deal with in the way that works best for you, right? And so you kind of treat them in terms of parallel of, this goes hand in hand of like, this is going to help your nervous system and the trauma responses, and it's going to help the neurodivergence.
So you treat the both of them. You don't necessarily try to separate them out, because I think it's hard to separate them out. And I don't meet many people that are neurodivergent, that haven't been, especially, I hate the word high functioning, so I'm not going to use it, but I don't meet many people that are neurodivergent that haven't experienced trauma. We've had, our sometimes our self-worth is low because we pick up 20% more criticism than our neurotypical peers, and that's just one thing. Also being neurodivergent makes you much more susceptible to lots of other things. I feel like my neurodivergence made me susceptible to accepting very low grade relationships. I was in bad relationships, I stayed in them. I attracted narcissistic people. I feel like my neurodivergence has in itself as well caused some trauma.
I think that's really good points, that those are it's not that because you were neurodivergent you were going to experience trauma, but because you're not neurodivergent, there are things that people and situations that come up that maybe somebody who doesn't have those same kind of predispositions wouldn't necessarily get exposed to, or they would recognize them and turn away from them earlier on, right? Like you said, sometimes
like relationships. I mean,
those
every time
relationships.
someone approached me, someone really bad could have approached me and said, I want to have a relationship with you. You're so amazing. And I would have said, yes, thank you. Thank you for considering me. And because my self-worth was low, if I had confidence and less, a knock-on effect from that, I hopefully my daughter would tell them people, no thank you, you're not for me, and walk away. But I think I've met a lot of neurodivergent men, women, non-binary that say, I've accepted bare minimum from relationships because my confidence is so low, and I see a correlation between that and neurodivergence.
I think that's an excellent point. It definitely bears more kind of consideration and study, and I think that's now you've given me something that I'm probably going to rabbit hole down as soon as we're off talking.
4 a.m. 4 a.m. rabbit hole.
Yeah, I'll be like Googling it, like who's done research on this and where's the studies and what's
such a scary correlation. It's a scary, and then there's a correlation between addiction and neurodivergence. There's so many correlations. So if it wasn't traumatic enough being neurodivergent, you then get hit with that stick, and a lot of women get diagnosed at menopause age. So let's just throw that in as well. But honestly, you've talked a lot about nervous system regulation within your work. And can you actually explain what it means to, I feel like nervous system is a huge buzzword at the moment. Either that or it's the echo chamber that I'm stuck in on Facebook and YouTube. But I feel like nervous system is a thing where it wasn't a thing when I was a child. I don't imagine my mum knew about her nervous system the way that women my age know about their nervous system. If someone doesn't really know what their nervous system is, can you give us a quick rundown?
Yeah, so it's the part of the brain body connection that really controls how our state of being is. So when we're relaxed, when we're calm, when we're able to just kind of take everything in, all the sensory inputs, all the experiences, your nervous system is in this kind of like wide open receptive state. And then when we're triggered by something, and we don't always even realize whether it's something like, because our our receptors can be so um like under the radar, under our conscious radar. Like when we're triggered by something, our nervous system goes into this response of like, do I need to like fight? Do I need to run away? Do I need to like people please? What do I need to do
To
to
get through
protect
this
myself?
experience. Yeah,
Right?
I
So
like the analogy of like it's like you're in the jungle and your nervous system is just scanning constantly for danger around you, whether it should fight, flight, mask or do
mhm.
whatever. So I think that that's a good analogy for it as well.
Yeah, it's you know, um at the subconscious level, right? Like it's, you don't realize all the things that your body is scanning for. It's not just like with your eyes or with your ears or your nose.
Yeah,
It's I mean, it's that extra sense, right? Of like something feels off to you, but you
yeah.
don't know why, right? And so the nervous
My whole
system,
life, yeah.
yeah, it's so it's what is going on under your conscious awareness, and then your nervous system, when it gets triggered, because there's not like that thought process that comes from like the higher level thinking part of the brain. You don't know what it's reacting to. You just know something's wrong and you need to like defend yourself. It feels unsafe, right? And so nervous system and understanding how to take back it take it to the conscious level of control is such a big thing right now, because we know that without that conscious level of control, that your brain's kind of offline. You're just reacting. You're just
Yeah.
emotional. You're just instinctual.
And some
And we
people
want
spend
everybody to.
their whole life in that mode. Can I ask you a question completely off the cuff? Do you have a cat?
I do.
Because I know that there's probably a bunch of ADHD people listening that are thinking, I need her to ask if that bell ringing is a cat. I'm so I'm so glad I asked you, because I was like, I know that's a cat, and if I don't ask you, I would have got off afterwards, and I would have thought, oh, I needed to know the answers to that question. Hello, cat.
This is Tracer. If anybody plays the game Overwatch, my kids named our two cats when we got them, Diva and Tracer, for their characters in the game. So yeah, Tracer's my little buddy right here.
Trace is lovely. Where is the bell coming from? The collar, or is
The
Trace
collar.
quiet? Oh, okay.
There's a
It's so the
collar. There
mouse
might be
is singing.
toys. There might be toys on the ground too.
Thank you so much. I just had to ask that, otherwise I would wonder the whole way through. I want to talk about identity because it's something that comes up constantly in the neurodivergent community. What happens psychologically when somebody has spent so many years and decades adapting, masking, people pleasing, and becoming whatever everybody else needed them to be? What does that do to one's nervous system?
So what does it do? It that hypervigilant state, it puts you in a stress response.
Yeah.
So your hormones are, and your the neurochemicals in your brain and your body are all out of whack, because you're trying to produce and utilize resources that to defend yourself, to find safety. And so you're this is why, like, I personally believe that we have some people that are struggle with, like, um autoimmune disorders, that
Me
struggle with their weight, that struggle with mood disorders, because you're trying to create a, a, a a safety for yourself in a world that feels unsafe. And so you're constantly always in this perpetual state of like arousal and pushing yourself and trying to do all
overwhelmed.
these things
Yeah.
in order to get by, instead of being able to be relaxed and accepted and just, you know, be yourself. And when we're doing that, we're not calm, we're not regulated, we're not able to
Ever
to
switch off.
switch off.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I meet so many people that are, either had trauma or they're neurodivergent or both, and they suffer with autoimmune things and like fibromyalgia, even myself, multiple sclerosis, they tried to diagnose me with a few times, lots of autoimmune things and lots of things like that. So I think that's a major correlation.
Yeah. And so it's how do we start learning to shut off those responses, right? It's to recognize, oh, I'm constantly in a state of perpetual needing to defend myself, to rush and to be busy and to like keep going in order to get things done, because otherwise I'm so tired and I just want to sleep, and
Yeah.
or I just want to just curl up and not do anything. And so recognizing that, like, I mean, that's why it is great that we have people nowadays that do embrace yoga and somatic practices, and where we people are trying to really, I think, this younger generation understands even better that life is not always like constantly being busy. It's taking care of themselves. It's doing things that are, not just trudging through life. And they're much more aware of like, yeah, that doesn't feel right for me, and they
Yeah.
don't do it. Like they'll speak up better. At least my kids do.
So for your average, I say your average Joe, or, that's late diagnosed and, they've had your nervous system, peaked their whole life and they've been in a constant state of overwhelm, to change a habit of a lifetime, it's hard to do. Where do you even start? I mean, I would find taking away all of them triggers. So for me, it was relationships. I couldn't start mending myself until I got rid of the relationships that were triggering, because my self-worth was low and I'd attracted all of these people over the years. So until I got in my own space, I wasn't able to fix that. But for your, that's not always possible for everyone. For your average Joe that's had their nervous system fraught their whole life, what can they do?
Well, I mean, the first thing is to me is to accept that you can change, accept that you can start doing little things to change the practices, the habits, the routines. Are you like, what are you doing personally? What are you doing for yourself? Are you taking that time? Even if it's just 5 minutes, take 5 minutes to stretch and drink some water and eat healthy things, instead of trying to always, go for the fast thing. Go for something slow. Mindfulness is a wonderful practice, slowing yourself down and paying attention to yourself in the moment. Journaling about, like, and connecting with yourself first, right? Even if you can't get out of like a relationship, if you still feel like that is the safest place for you, maybe in the relationship, doing littler things to support yourself and accepting that what you're doing right now is enough, and you can keep working towards change, the change that you want to
But
see.
realization and knowledge is the first step.
Yeah, yeah, I would say that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. I, one of the things that I love about your work is the idea of actualizing your best self. And for somebody who spent years feeling that they need to fix themselves, what's the difference between personal growth and constantly trying to become somebody you're not? And also tell us about actualizing yourself.
Well, I thank you for saying it that way. Yeah, I don't believe that people need to be fixed. I don't believe that people are broken. I I believe that people do try to um hide themselves, that they don't want to embrace all of themselves, the whole authentic sense of, yeah, there's going to be things that are um, easier to accept about yourself and things that are harder to accept about yourself. And to recognize that when you're working on a growth journey, on a mind, on being very mindful of who you are and what you want to do, right? It's first step is the clarity, look at what are your personal values? What do you want to accomplish? What are your goals? What everybody's different. Just, like nobody should want to be somebody else,
Mm.
right? I
I
want,
think we're so used to it because of
oh
masking,
yeah.
I'm awful for it. I grew up in a predominantly Nigerian area where I live, and as soon as I was around Nigerian people, my accent would change, my everything would change, and I would do the same throughout life with every kind of different person I met. I've prided myself on being a social chameleon, and I didn't actually realize that that was just my neurodivergent you masking, so I get that 100%.
Yeah. So clarity, then, create what you want and then just cultivate it, right? Keep refining it, keep moving towards that vision that you set for yourself, right? And yeah, can you look at somebody and go, "Oh, I really like that trait about them and I want to cultivate that more in myself," right? That's okay.
But not
Doesn't mean,
emulate it.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I get that. It's hard to stop a habit of a lifetime, though. Is it ever too late or too early to do this journey?
Absolutely
Never.
not, right? Like, I think that you can, at whatever age, if you feel like, I am not embracing myself, if
Yeah.
I'm trying to be somebody just to please someone else or to hide from, you know, whatever I'm afraid of, then no, start, really look at yourself and start changing, start growing. And is it, could you do it too early? No, because I mean, our children are the ones that they're figuring it out, right? It's
Yeah.
like, so, as soon as you're self-aware enough to start doing it, then absolutely. It's part of the process.
And actualizing yourself. So that's your thing. That's your work at the moment. What is actualizing yourself to anybody that doesn't know? What do you do in actualizing yourself?
Well, it's working on that cultivation. You know, when people come to me, we start with the foundations, understanding, okay, where are you at in your life? Like, do you have the foundations? How are you sleeping? What are you doing to nourish yourself? What are you doing to care for your body? What are you doing to care for your mind? What are you doing to care for your spirit?
So do
And
you do that in coaching or group classes or
most of my work is one-on-one. I'm starting to develop some workshops. I do a monthly women's healing circle, which is a virtual online event on the third Saturday of the month. It's 10 o'clock Central Time in the United States, so
Mhm.
it's like mid-afternoon in England. Um, and it's for neurodivergent women, and we talk about different topics. This month, we're going to talk about loneliness and what that is and isn't, and how
Yeah.
that impacts people. Um, and yeah, so, I think, uh, there's, I would suggest that people just kind of find somebody to talk to that is, has some supports to them.
Yeah.
Find some books to read, or find,
Do you have any? Can you recommend any?
um,
I don't want to put you on the spot. I know you're probably like, and when you get off the phone, you'll say, "Oh my God, I remember like 5 or 10 of them." But is there anything you can think of off the top of your head that you would recommend?
so the person that I recommend, to help start your journey, if you haven't read any of Brene Brown's books on vulnerability, and really, I mean, she's a researcher. She researches about shame, and letting go of like that idea, the idea of yourself, and so any of her books, daring greatly, and there, she just has, I like you said, I blanking on any of the
Yeah.
titles of her
Are,
book.
are you writing?
I am writing. I've written a chapter, that's going to be in a book called Rooted in Resilience, and
Hmm.
so it's kind of like my journey at 50 of like realizing, oh,
Yeah.
what am I doing with my life and
Yeah.
where am I going?
Um, and also, where can we find you? If somebody comes off of, listening to this podcast, and they're like, hey, where can we find Elizabeth? What's your best platform and your best place to discover you, Elizabeth?
So my current working toward is Substack.
Yeah.
But if you want to get in touch with me, you can
The
go to
smart people's choice, Substack.
yeah, it's
When I use it, I feel really intellectual.
yeah, well, I find so much of social media to be so noisy
Yeah.
to me. Like, I get on there with like an intent of like, oh, I want to look at this, or I want to go see this person, and as soon as I open up like the platforms, I get lost
Yeah.
immediately, and I'm like,
And
whereas
then
Substack,
6 hours later.
yes, exactly, exactly. But Substack,
Substack, you
it's
feel like you're learning something. I feel like there's a lot of cool people on Substack as well. I yearn to be a Substacker. I did have
yes.
an account many years ago, but there's just so many social media things to choose from. How can we find you on Substack? Is it your name?
Actualizing your best self.
So is it what because I looked for you on Facebook yesterday to tag you in a post, and I found you under actualizing your best self. So if is your website as well actualizing your best self?
That's correct. Yep.
Amazing. Honestly, is there anything you think that I have so many questions, but it can go in any direction. Is there anything you feel like I've missed out on, which is completely valid because I'm going to go away and think, oh my God, I should have asked her this, that, and the other. Is there anything that you think that I should have asked you or that you'd like to share?
Well, I actually just think that your interview style and like what you asked and what we touched on hit so many great topics. Like, I think that I could spend hours talking to you and going into depth about different things, And no, I honestly, I think we really hit a lot of really cool subjects to talk about. And I can't think of anything more except that I would probably just spend hours talking to you about all of it.
I really appreciate that because growing up, I didn't really fit in anywhere, and I would try and make friends, and my way of making friends was to ask them 20 questions about themselves, and people go, oh, what is this, the Spanish Inquisition? I've heard that so many times in my life. Or if someone would tell a story, I would then tell a similar story that happened to me, because that's my way of empathizing and relating to people. And everyone, that was the wrong thing to do as well. So now I'm talking on podcasts, and people are saying to me, "Oh my God, I could talk to you for hours." And it's cathartic for me. It's really healing my inner child. So I thank you honestly so much for coming on. I could have spoke to you for hours. There's so many directions we could have gone in, but I'm happy with how it went, and I thank you profusely for the work you're doing. Do you still do therapy, or are I know it's a form of therapy, that actualizing yourself, but is that where all your eggs are in that basket at the moment?
So I do both. I do the deep work through mental health therapy on one side, and then I'm starting this new kind of venture of the coaching, and I'll be launching some workshops in the next couple
Is it
months.
just you, or have you got a camaraderie you work with, or is it you're a one woman band?
I'm as we call, a solopreneur. I am a one woman show.
And your cat.
Yes. I have that, the cats, right? The cats are what, like.
Every woman's must. I mean, I've got about 7. 4 of them have moved out, but I have a lot of cats. But honestly, I thank you so much. So thank you for joining me today, Elizabeth. Everybody, I will share Elizabeth's links on Facebook, on Spotify, and everywhere I bloody can. So thank you so much for joining us, everyone.
Thank you for having me. It was my pleasure to be here.
Perfect. Let me just